This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the lab room.
10 minutes or less. Pittsburgh Steelers. Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on this program, 10 minutes or less. Pittsburgh Steelers. Give me that clock. Let's go. Season rewind for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was so not a Pittsburgh Steelers-like season. I mean, at times, I had talked to some people close to the team before the season started, and they all told me, look, I don't know what you're expecting. I don't know what Steelers fans are expecting, but this isn't going to be a pretty season for the Steelers. And I said, how can you say that? It's Mike Tomlin. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you talking about? I mean, even when they're bad, they're still good. And I looked at that division and I said, okay, you got the Super Bowl champ, Baltimore Ravens. You got the Cincinnati Bengals. They're that upstart team in the division. I know it's going to be tough within that division, but they're still the Steelers. Okay? That still means something. That's good enough for 8 wins minimum. They're probably still going to win 9 games and challenge for a playoff spot, though. And so, when I was warned, and a lot of times when you're warned of something, you need to take heed. I didn't do that. I said, man, get out of here with that nonsense. And so, when the season started and they lost to Tennessee in week 1, I'm like, I had the Scooby-Doo look. Huh? And then when they lost again, and the following week, I'm like, wait a minute. And then they lost again. And then they lost. I'm like, wait a minute. You just lost to the Vikings in London? And they were winless too? And then go into their bye at 0-4. And I'm like, whoa. This Steelers team really isn't good. I mean, they gave up 40 points to the Bears. When do the Steelers at home give up 40 points to anybody? Just doesn't happen. So I'm like, man, maybe they were right. Maybe the Steelers aren't going to have a season that's worth a damn. And then they come off the bye, and this was a season of runs, okay? So you start the season 4 straight losses. You come off the bye, you get 2 in a row, you win. So now you're 2-4, and you say, hey, that's more like it. Here comes the Steelers. They're about to make a run. Everything's okay. Or is it? You lose 2 after you win 2, and you're at 2-6. At this point now, I'm saying, okay, you're done. Your season's over. Now, let's just try to save face here. Let's try to make this season respectable because before the season, I was hearing rumblings and grumblings that if the Steelers didn't have a good season, Tomlin could be on the way out. And I'm like, are you crazy? That's crazy talk. Get out of my face with that crazy talk. So, to see them at 2-6, that started to give the detractors a little bit of traction. Now they're like, hey, told you he could be in some trouble. I'm like, I don't want to hear that nonsense. This guy's one of the best coaches in the league. Get out of my face. So I'm like, come on, Mike. Get the troops up. Start winning some ball games. He said, I'm good. They won 3 in a row. Now they're 5-6. So I'm like, okay. And you're not even out of the playoff discussion, even though I put you to rest at 2-6. You're not even out of the playoff discussion yet. But then, just when you thought it was safe, they go and they lose 2 straight again. And now they're back to 5-8, 3 games under 500. They're essentially done now. But they make one last push and almost get into the postseason with a 3-game winning streak to finish off the season at 8-8. But it's just not enough. They just miss out on the postseason. And they finish up the season at 8-8. So Tomlin was able to rally the troops. They started to play better football down the stretch. But it was just too little, too late. So Steelers finished up the season at 8-8, but there were some things to build on in that season because the problem that I always have with the Steelers is that they allow themselves to get old. And when they get old, they start losing football games. And so I feel like they need to start infusing some more youth. This year, it was a lot more about injuries and a mixture of guys being old and injuries and kind of trying to work all of the new guys in. You lose Keenan Lewis in free agency. That hurt you a little bit too. So it was all about trying to work in some of the new stuff, then having some of the old stuff be old, and then having some injuries along the way that were major. So you look at this Steelers team in 2014 as we fast forward to this offseason, and let's look at their list of free agents, see who they need to bring back, and see how they need to improve this team moving forward. So you look at the list: Jonathan Dwyer, Felix Jones, Plaxico Burress, Jericho Cotchery, Emmanuel Sanders, David Johnson, Michael Palmer, Guy Wimper, Fernando Velasco, Cody Wallace, Brett Kiesel, Ziggy Hood, Al Woods, Jamal Westerman, Jason Worrells, Stevenson Sylvester, Ryan Clark, Matt McBriar, Greg Warren, Will Allen are all free agents, no restricted free agents on that list. Jason Worrells has already been taken care of. They slapped him with the transitional tag. He's probably going to be back. They have an opportunity to match any offer that someone makes to him, signs him to an offer sheet. They get 5 days to match. I don't think he's going anywhere after the way he ended last season. So let's look at the rest of the guys on the list that need to be brought back. Let's start with the receivers, because I think Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that you want back, but do you think he's going to be back? Probably not. Probably not. I think he's going to hit free agency, and I think someone's going to sweep him up. Last year, remember, the Patriots made a play for him. You had him assigned with a tender, and you were able to get him back after the Patriots threatened to sign him to an offer sheet. So I think this year you're actually going to lose him. But I think you have some stuff on this roster. You'll be all right. But you don't need to let Jericho Cotchery go either. I think I'm really tired of Jericho Cotchery being undervalued in this league. I thought he was solid for the Jets. They just let him walk away. I thought he was solid for you last year, and it's like almost like a revelation that you had. Oh, this guy's on our roster. Why not use him? Wow, he's catching touchdowns for us. And then you started to use him more and more. Now he's a free agent. I think you need to sign Jericho Cotchery back. He's like a poor man's Hines Ward for you. I don't understand, without all of the toughness, but he's going to catch the football if you throw it to him. You need to bring him back. I don't understand why this is hard to figure out. Bring him back. You look at another position, and Ryan Clark, for me, I feel like there are several positions on this team. And let's start with Ryan Clark, that you need to start infusing some young blood into the lineup. And I think safety is one of those positions. You just brought back two of your Pittsburgh Steelers stalwarts in Troy Polamalu at the safety position and at tight end Heath Miller. And so I think Ryan Clark, by virtue of Polamalu coming back, you need to go ahead and let him walk away. You don't want to be old in that secondary, especially at that safety position. You drafted Shamarko Thomas. Why not let the young fella play a little bit and see what you have at the safety position, whether it's him, Golden, whoever you're going to play. I think it's time for some young blood at that safety position. I think you let Ryan Clark hit free agency and find work elsewhere. What about Brett Kiesel? As a defensive end, he's been great for you over the years, but I think it's time to allow Kiesel to move on, whether he retires or he plays for another team. I really think it's time for you to let that guy move on to the next chapter in his career. And you got two other guys that I think you need to bring back, and Al Woods and Ziggy Hood. Those are some young guys, some young blood. Look, I like my beef up front fresh. And that's fresh beef right there. Relatively young guys that I think have a lot of potential and promise in the National Football League. They can get pressure on the quarterback as well as stop the run. They're your homegrown products. Bring Al Woods and Ziggy Hood back if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Punter Matt McBriar, thought he had a solid season. Bring Matt McBriar back if you are the Steelers as well. So those are all the players I think you need to bring back. Out with the old in Ryan Clark and Brett Kiesel. In with the new, with some younger guys. Start having the changing of the guards be younger guys infusing in there with a lot of your veterans. And so let's move on to team needs. And you look at this Steelers team, and you got some needs. And this is the issue the Steelers have. You don't have a lot of cap space. You had to restructure some deals, that of Polamalu and some other guys, just to get to respectability with your cap situation. And so You don't have a lot of money right now, and you're looking to do some more deals that will free up some more space. Keep in mind, you just signed Jason Worlds to a tender, and so that's what $9.7 million right there tied up in one player. So you're really looking to reach a long-term deal with him, which will bring that cap number down significantly. But right now, you just don't have a lot of space to work with. But I tell you what, you've got some needs that you need to address. Number one on that list for you should be receiver, because I just talked about two guys that are going to be up at receiver, and Emmanuel Sanders probably not going to be back. But Jericho Cotchery, I think, needs to be back. And if you bring him back, I don't think you have any needs at receiver. If he's not back, and neither is Sanders, then you got a need at receiver. Running back, okay? You found a gem, and I thought that he wasn't going to be quite what you were looking for last year, but I was wrong about Le'Veon Bell. And Le'Veon Bell came in and really infused life into the running game in Pittsburgh. But you need a backup. And you need somebody with a little bit of speed, a little bit of giddy up. And you went out, you got Felix Jones or Rod Stevens, Howlings. Those guys didn't work. You need running back help. And you need a backup, and you need a guy you can trust that can tote the rock and have a little bit of speed. That, my friend, is a draft need right there. You go in the draft and you find that guy. You look at corner. You were missing Keenan Allen last year. That hurt, okay? That's fine. It happens. So you got some young guys, Cortez Allen and some other guys out there that you feel good about, but I think you need some more. You need another corner out there, and I think you could also use some defensive end help as well. I just talked about all the defensive ends that you have up for free agency. If you bring the two guys that I told you to bring back, then that need isn't as glaring, and maybe you can just fill out the roster with another guy in the draft and go that route. Because, again, you don't have a lot of money. All of your damage that you do to this roster in terms of improving it needs to be through the draft, because you just don't have a lot of money, a lot of resources to allocate toward free agency. And as you can hear the buzzer going off, it probably went off about 30 seconds ago. That's my time. That was the Pittsburgh Steelers. 10 minutes or less. Leave Mike Tomlin alone. 10 minutes or less. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
In the lab room.